The last few chapters of the first volume of the RWBY manga focus on an original story that centers around Team Juniper and Team RWBY and a mission that they ended up going on. And this likely takes place between Volume 1 and Volume 2, or at least in the first half of Volume 2. We know this is the case because we see Roman Torchwick, who's investigating an abandoned subway tunnel and remarking that he'd like to see it lead to Mountain Glen, the abandoned city that we saw Dr. RWBY and Team RWBY go to that ended up housing Roman's hidden hideout, and where they ended up sending the train from Mountain Glen into Vale to cause panic. We cut back to Team Juniper, and we see them on their way to their mission, which eventually ends up being to take out Grimm. Specifically, they're to take out two King Taijus, those two-headed serpents that Ren ended up taking out one of back when he was first introduced back in Volume 1. And it ends up being that instead of two, they end up finding 4 of them. So there's 8 heads that they're fighting in total, and they're not having any luck. Their blades aren't doing anything, their bullets aren't doing anything, and even Nora's smashing techniques aren't doing anything. Team RWBY isn't there because their fearless leader ended up sleeping in and making them late for the mission. We cut back to Roman Torchwick, who finally got into the subway tunnel, and he actually encounters a Grimm himself, a small octopus-looking thing that he actually starts freaking out about and wanting the White Fang members with him to kill it quickly. And this is because he had read about these types of Grimm. You know, he remarks saying most type of Grimm, or any Grimm, you don't want roaming around, but this type especially, you don't want anywhere near you. We cut back to Team Juniper, who's still having trouble, and this little Grimm actually shows up there. It's, as I said, a small octopus-looking thing, so it actually wraps its tentacles around the other Grimm, and kind of amalgamates with it, and fuses them all together into an 8-headed serpent, or almost a hydra-looking thing. This poses even more of a problem because if they couldn't defeat it before, and this ends up getting all the way to the city, then it's going to cause a lot of panic for the citizens, and it's going to do a lot of damage. Now, Team RWBY finally shows up, and they still aren't able to do anything. All of their attacks are just bouncing off, and they end up having to use combination attacks to bring it down. They use Bumblebee and Checkmate, and there's nothing that's really working. They end up having to use Ice Flowers between Weiss and RWBY to increase the penetration power of RWBY's sniper bullets, and they end up penetrating through into the center of the serpent where this small little Grimm is, and they end up killing it and eventually taking it down, or at least separating them, then they can take them down individually. Ozpin and Glinda Goodwitch are actually watching this, and they remark, you know, they don't need any help, they're doing alright, and that's the end of that mission, actually. So it's not as much of a story that I was hoping for. I was hoping it was more centered around Roman Torchwick, we'd get a little bit more with him, but throughout this fight we actually get to see a lot of good character interactions between all of Team RWBY and Team Juniper. This manga actually captures the characters themselves quite well, in my opinion. It's also something to note that as Roman Torchwick's flying away, he ends up getting shot down in his ship by 2 of Penny's swords. And she's flying around using a jetpack, or wings, a flight unit, as it says in the manga, and her swords are kind of like torpedoes on the sides of the wings. It's honestly just a little funny thing to see that Penny now has attachments, and they never utilize this in the actual show of what attachments Penny could use, because she is a cyborg, or actually just a flat-out robot. Cyborg is part human, but she's just a robot and could use attachments. So it'd be interesting to see more exploration on this front and see what actually Penny could be capable of. And at the end, we actually get to see Dr. RWBY freaking out, saying that, you guys, you saw a possession-type Grimm? What a missed opportunity! We could have researched it and we could have examined it. So this is a rare type of Grimm, a possession-type Grimm, which was mentioned back in the White trailer that was chronicled in this manga as well, that the Schnee Company actually got a hold of a possession-type Grimm, and that amalgamated all of the Grimm together into that giant knight, or the giant suit of armor that Weiss ended up defeating. The only possession-type Grimm that we have actually seen in the RWBY series is actually those ghost-type Grimm that that was fought at the beginning of Volume 4 may have appeared one more time other than that, but at the beginning of Volume 4 where it possesses rocks and trees and dead things. But the fact that now it can possess living things, or I wouldn't necessarily know if you'd qualify Grimm as living, at least in the case of the RWBY world, because they don't possess aura, but they possess Grimm and can amalgamate them together. Now, Roman Torchwick also stated that you don't want them anywhere near you, so that implies that they could also possess people. So this could be really problematic if this is actually canon. That's the thing. The manga, we don't know if it's 100% canon. Well, it's obviously not 100% canon because it could contradict the series in some way, but this technically doesn't contradict the series yet. We could find out that Possession Type Grimm actually can't take over other Grimm or something along those lines. As of right now, these Possession Type Grimm look like they could be a huge problem later on in the series. Overall, I'd recommend that, you pick up the RWBY manga, or at least give it a read through, see what you think about it. I've noticed in a few things reading online that a couple pages in the actual print version of the manga weren't contained in the manga online. Maybe on a different site they would be, but either way, it's definitely a good read, in my opinion. It's not the best manga out there, but it's definitely good, and if you have seen the RWBY series, like the characters, want a little bit extra and a little bit more character development, this is definitely something that you'd want to pick up. And frankly, I'm looking forward to Volume 2. I don't know when it'll be out, or even if it will be out for that matter, but I hope it will be, and I hope we get to see more of the characters that we know and love, and especially, Pyrrha, since we likely won't be getting any more of her throughout this series. But anyways, that went to a darker place than I expected. Let me know what you think. If you've read the manga, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on if you want to read the manga, or what you think of this video overall. But if you liked it, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.